A set of Bosch drills, or a Bosch drill and a Bosch impactor. This is an old set, probably from around 2013, 2014. Not a bad set, seeing as I have the same set, but even though I use the same ones, they're not the greatest. They're very old now at this stage, 10 years old at least. It's a brushed motor on the drill, decent motor, decent switch. They did get plenty of use and they do have good last out of them, but compared to today, not as powerful now. Plus, these are one of the first drills I encountered with the actual fixed chuck, which looks like that's what's wrong with this one. It's a jaw missing, so that's going to need a chuck. No centre screw to hold the chuck on. The chuck's actually torqued on and locked in place with Loctite. So Bosch don't sell this chuck, you have to buy the whole gearbox, which was a con from the start. You can just cut the chuck off and replace it with a normal 1/2-inch chuck. The impactor, what, 10 years ago when you were buying these things, if you had Bosch batteries and you needed an impactor, this was your option. They were good enough at the time. They still run today, anybody still has them. Motors weren't great. Very small brush, they weren't wild powerful. Good gearbox, but eventually became loose. But the motor was always the problem. Once they were burnt out, they weren't worth fixing. But even still, 10 years later, some people still have these and use them. Me being one of them. But they were never great for heavy work. So if you're putting on a lot of big screws throughout the entire day, they couldn't really handle it. They weren't great for that. Better for lighter stuff, like kitchen fitter, stuff like that there. If they're doing light work, less often, they'd last years, but if they're doing a lot of heavy work, it'd eventually burn out the motor. That's why this one lasts so long. It's only ticking in and out small screws, so it doesn't get any real heavy use. So that one's lasting years. What's wrong with these ones anyway? So we can guess this one. Chuck. And at least the old jaw is actually out of it, so we can just cut this off. So that should be alright. This one, switch problem. Or maybe a battery contact problem. Maybe. I'll have to check that one out. Leave that for now, and we'll change this chuck. I hope that's the chuck that's actually wobbling and not the spindle of the drill. Hopefully not anyway. Right, this needs to be cut off. Stick something in. That there's the depth to the bottom of the hole. Bottom of the actual hole is your spindle. So stick something in to measure it. Stick it on the outside. There is where the thread of your spindle starts. So slice straight down there. You should just graze the top of the spindle. Then we can actually cut down the side to release the clamping hold on the spindle itself. And get the chuck off. Now, that's your spindle. There's the end of your chuck. It's still clamped on tight. So all you need to do now, slice down one side, just skimming the spindle thread. So you are actually going to cut the spindle thread a little bit. That'll release the clamping hold on this end of the chuck. and it'll just knock off easily. So you're just getting the very edge of that thread. That's all you need to do. So now, you can just see the threads here, but I'm not actually fully through. So just can we grind down to finish it off. Now I'm through. You can see that whole thread section. And you can see it split up the middle. So now you know that there clamping hold on the actual spindle was broken apart, and it should be slack enough to just knock off now. That's it. Just these Bosch chucks. Just make sure them screws on the bottom are still tight, because they sometimes can rattle loose, especially if you're using hammer mode. And then the actual inside, give it a wee clean out with the air compressor. And that's her, ready for a new chuck. Now, as you can see, them threads, they are actually cut. So there's a little bit of damage on them, but still, even with that little bit of damage, there's still plenty of clamping hold on the rest of the thread. Plus the damage, because she was on the spindle as you cut through it, because she's on the chuck still when she's been cut, you're just cutting the threads, you're not actually damaging them. And any damage you do happen to do will be rectified whenever this here part of the chuck is unscrewed. That'll rectify the thread as it's coming off. So the thread is cut, but it's not actually damaged. The new chuck will thread onto that, no problem. This, never really liked this drill, to be honest. They were good, they lasted their time, but that chuck was always a sore spot for me. Bosch wanted you to replace the whole gearbox just to replace the chuck, which was a bit of a con. Cut it off and you can stick on a standard one. So the thread on the chuck was always just a standard thread. There was never any need for Bosch to not sell that chuck separately. This particular model of drill, there's basically 4 parts to it. Drill body for the cover, the gearbox and chuck assembly here, motor assembly, and the switch and battery contact assembly. That's about it. And even on the motor assembly, there's a brushed motor on this with a brush ring just like the DeWalt one. But that brush ring was never sold separately either. So if you wanted to change the brushes in this here, if you wore through the brushes and you had to change the ring, you had to spend 80 quid replacing the entire motor, which was another con. Brushes were out in this thing, buy a set of Makita ones, put them in instead. So I never actually liked this drill all that much, even though I used the same model. Longevity on it, because they weren't allowing it to be properly repairable, they weren't a proper professional tool in my opinion. They lasted, but Bosch didn't really want you fixing it if something went wrong. So never really liked it for that reason. This one can be fixed because we know you can just swap out the chuck. Now, no center screw on this to hold this chuck on. Only thing you can do is get a bit of Loctite and actually lock the chuck on permanently. If it ever fails again, you just have to do the exact same thing and cut it off. Open your chuck up full. Take it off again. Make sure you're in high speed. And then just slap it on good and hard. That's the chuck changed, ready to go. Best thing to do, because it's got Loctite on it, is let that sit for a few hours or a day. That'll be well locked on, so that chuck won't come off again. That's all she needs. Now for this one. Could be a switch or it could be a wire. Right, it's not a wire. It's more than likely it's a switch. Of course, you can't buy that switch on its own. You have to buy the whole switch assembly, which is including the controller and the battery terminal. Far too expensive for all of that. So instead, I'll quickly try to open it up and see if we can repair it on the inside. A couple of little tabs around the outside, prise them up. Doesn't look to be too much wrong with us, not even dirty on the inside. Give it a quick wee clean with some contact cleaner. That should get rid of any of the grit or dust that was causing interference. Or it could just be a case it could be worn out. This wee wiper here, it actually wipes this potentiometer, gives you your variable speed. That there can eventually wear out, and the wee legs on it can snap away. If the legs are broken, you're not getting full contact, there's nothing you can do. So on full power we're having problems. So maybe it's just a bad contact. So I'll also just bend that up ever so slightly. That's all I'm going to do. Because if it's anything more than that, it's not going to be worth fixing. Just get everything tucked back in again. Much better. The butt's holding no problem. And she's not jumping on the speeds anymore. That's it. One Bosch drill and one Bosch impactor. Both fixed up, ready to go for cheap. Decent enough machines, especially when they're new, but nowadays, not the best. do the job, but they won't do any heavy work. And I never really liked them, simply because gearbox one piece, motor one piece, switch one piece. If anything was wrong with them, you couldn't really fix them. But that's fixed up now, just from cleaning out the switch. The other one just got a new chuck. But that's her, fixed up. That'll keep this man running for a while longer. Right, up next, what have we got? An old Makita SDS drill. She is old. This is the HR3000C from the year 2000. 24 years old. Does it run though? That's the question. It's running very hard. Hammer drill and hammer. Doesn't sound right. Doesn't seem to be any hammer out of it. Right. She's running way too free and fast. So there's something going on up in here on the head of her. She's not engaging the actual hammer. Drill's working fine, just not hammering. So this could be a broken piston or a broken crank or something. I'll strip her down and get a look inside, see what we can do with her. Now these can be a risky one. Especially seeing as that there. What is that about? Why does the bottom nut have a hole on it, or the bottom cover? What's going on here? Unless that came loose before. The bottom cover is not meant to have a hole in it. And it's not meant to be all chewed up like that. So something's happened that in the past. Maybe this nut came loose, burned through it. And of course the fan would have come loose then. Burning the housing, or burning the cover. That's not the problem here. These can be risky because there's no hammer action. Something's gone inside. Because something's broken up in here and she's running so free, it means the motor isn't actually under all that much load. So if there's anything wrong with the motor, it might not show because there's no real resistance. She's running so free. If you then fix it, just under the extra load of the piston and all, then you could end up with a sparking motor. Because the thing is so old, the armature could be on its way out. And it'll only show up once you've it fixed. Sadly, you just don't know that until you've fixed it. So she's running here to begin with. She didn't seem to be sparking. She sounded okay. But we'll pull that armature out as well, just to make sure. That shouldn't be that tight. To press off that brass nut and replace the fan, more than likely. I would just glue that back on if there's nothing wrong with it, but it has been burnt up here as well. We'll see what the rest of it's like. Why is that so tight? That's engaging there. That's definitely working. Just take a peek and make sure. Yeah. Right. So the actual mechanism is working. The motor's driving the gear is driving the crank and piston. So it's doing all the motions, it's just not getting any compression. It's not actually running free then. She's just got no seal. So it's either going to be a piston o-ring problem or striker o-ring problem. They're just not getting a seal to produce any hammer, or it is getting a seal and it's nothing up top to actually hit. The actual hammer pin maybe snapped or something. Either way, we'll have to go in deeper. That looks okay. That seems okay. And that's alright. So what is going on? Right, unless it is just these two O-rings. Wash this out, change them O-rings, get it rebuilt, test it again. Armature's okay. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Armature seems okay. I'll just press off this brass nut. That was on there surprisingly tight. I'll use the bearing press. Now if I don't actually have a new fan, I might put that back together again. Glue it back on. That's only if I don't have a fan. Everything else seems to be okay. Now, one question I get asked quite a lot, or people comment on, why bother washing it out? If you think it's just the O-rings for the striker and the piston, why go to the bother of washing everything out again? That is a perfect example of why. So generally, if you're servicing a machine, if it's stopped hammering, the likes of this here, and you strip it apart and you see these are the problem, yes, you can just replace them two O-rings and you'll get your hammer back. Simple fix. Plus, somebody leaves it in and they don't want to spend an awful lot of money on it. If they're in a hurry, they just want it fixed and that's it. That can sometimes just get you out. Get it up and running again. But that's been a repair shop. A lot of people leave machines in asking for a service. So they actually want it cleaned out, repaired fully, whatever seals changed, bearing seal changed, but the main thing, new grease in it, new O-rings, piston and striker. That gets it running again, and you know the grease and all's good, and it will last longer into the future. But the main reason why I wash it out, as I say, this is a good example of why. Once you start washing it out, you see more of the machine and you get to inspect nearly all the components. You get rid of the dirt and the grease, you're holding it in your hand, you can see anything is wrong. Plus, when you're putting it through the parts washer, like this, and you're washing it out, if your parts washer's clean, anything that's broken is going to fall out of the metal tray of the parts washer. If you're hearing little dings and bangs of debris falling out, you know there's something else wrong. Perfect example why. This wee plastic sleeve, which is actually busted through. So the pins have actually come through the plastic sleeve. That's also gone. And if that's broken, other things can be broken. That's a plastic inside your hammer pipe running through the grease. Can probably wear out your O-rings very fast as well. So that could be why there's no hammer. But that needs to be changed anyway. Plus, when you see this broken, an extra piece, you start to rethink the machine, which I should have realised from the beginning. These pieces here are meant to be on this tool holder. They shouldn't be sitting loose. There's actually an O-ring back here that holds them on, which is obviously missing. With that off, we'll just also test the striker. The bearing's okay. The tool holder's alright. The striker bolt is okay. Get away with that. Just need some fresh grease on it. So that's why I go to a wee bit extra effort and actually wash most of the parts out. If I don't know for certain if it is these two parts, generally I'll wash the whole thing out anyway, give it a good service. Mightn't be a complete service, I'm not going to change every single bearing and seal and o-ring. The main ones is all you need to change to get you out, plus a wash out and new grease. So that's why I always do it. If I hadn't washed it out, I wouldn't have seen that was broken. You'll see this goes together a lot differently to where now you'll see this is actually going to go together and look a lot different compared to when I took it out, because it wasn't fully complete. Those other components are meant to be attached on. One being this. Let's just get that striker on there first. Must be a common repair. Actually have a bag with the parts needed already set up. Just got some heavy stuff in there too, just to help the hammer. Push that down. See how free that actually moves. See, when I took the old one off, I had to really force it. The old one was actually collapsed. The part that was missing on the top, it's just a little o-ring. Tiny little skinny o-ring. That's what holds this whole assembly together. Well, obviously that's why it's not hammering. That O-ring's completely broken. She must be cracked or something. She just popped when I was taking it off. So new O-rings should get this up and running again. If that one was actually broke. A bit of heat to help it go in. About 20 to 30 mil of grease into the gearbox. There's another problem. No O-ring on the top. Need an O-ring on this here cap. Without that O-ring, some of the grease will eventually leak out. Need something on it. Ten or 20 mil down on here too. And it's taking this cover off. You have to get it to clear that ring. make sure you have your gasket in place first. For this one, you have to get this wee notch underneath the cover first. Obviously the ball detent can be on one of these two holes. Over where the gear is sitting back here. She's at the top position. So it goes on here. So now if you rotate it round, that's hammer, sorry, that's drill only. Down here, it's hammer and drill. That's in there. Your pins to the right. Knock that on. The fan, just pressed it back together again. 1, I don't have another one in stock. 2, they actually come in 2 pieces anyway. Fan is 1 piece, the insert's another. So this one should be alright, even if it is a little bit tight. I'm just going to change those brushes as well. They're not gone, but they're halfway worn, so as well change them now and have it come back in again later. I would replace that base if I had a new one, but I don't have a new one, so the old one is going to have to do. Really don't want to order an apart and have this sitting on the shelves for a couple of weeks just waiting on a base, and it's not really going to have any effect on the running of the machine. So the old one will do. Steel ball on first. And your pin. Spring over the top of that. Now, should hopefully be her. Still running very fast, but maybe that's just how she runs. Now, does she hammer? That's the main thing. That's her. Up and running. Hammering like she should. One broken part. Plastic sleeve. Broke and wore out the O-rings. So they broke, loose compression. Broken part. Had to be replaced. Strip her down, clean her out, replace the parts. That's her sorted. Up and running again and hammering like she should. Not bad for a 24-year-old machine. That's why you buy the Makita stuff. That's her. Now, next up is another oldie. An old Ryobi hammer. This is the ED450. And she's from 2005. These are a great hammer. But, like all old blue Ryobi tools, most of the parts are just about obsolete. Actually, they are actually gone. Can't get them anymore unless somebody has old stock. What's wrong with this? Let's see if it can be fixed. Sounds alright there. So I stood it up. Let's get on there. I don't know if you can hear that or not. There's a rattle coming off that motor. Sounds like a loose fan. It does happen on these old Ryobis sometimes. Do I have a fan is the question. No, it's not the fan. Sometimes they can come loose, especially if they're overheating. Melts the actual plastic fan. It's sitting on a brass insert, or a steel insert even, held down by a nut. If the plastic gets too hot, it starts to melt and the fan becomes loose. Eventually starts banging around inside, completely detached. But that one's not. That's fine. Maybe it's actually the bearing. Ah, Christ, that is. I'll move it this way. Nothing. If I move it this way, it's flapping back and forth. So we've got a bearing problem. Now, hopefully it's just the bearing collapsed, or is on the process of collapsing, because if it's melted the housing, I'll not be able to get one. Don't recall them leads being so short. That out of the way. I'll get this fan off. Impactor's always best for getting this nut off. Gently go back and forth a few times. It normally impacts off. I can't tell yet if it's the actual bearing or the housing. Well, it's the bearing either way, but did it also take out the housing is what we want to know. Brushes are okay. Nothing wrong with them. come out. That's a bit of work. That's the motor off the head. Now I have to get the motor out of the motor housing. Normally that's the easy bit. There we go. Luckily enough, that's not the housing. That looks okay. So what is just this bearing? Change this, should fix the problem. There's a little dust shield gone there as well, but that's not important. See, as we're changing this one, may as well change that one. Actually doesn't sound that great anyway, so we'll just change it. Right, I've got to press that out. Yeah, that's gone. Clean that. Yeah, there's the problem. There's the insulation washer, totally destroyed. Should be able to do without it anyway. I'll just check and see if I have one in stock. I have to press this bearing out of this and get it back on here. That's that out. We have a 6000 bearing on this top one. It's actually very bad. That's a 6301. So I'll just give it a little bit of heat. Makes it a little bit easier. Them back in as well. I think they're actually for the brush holder. They're holding onto the Bakelite. They shouldn't really come out to begin with. Get a bit of extra grease in there, just a little bit in there, and just in case we'll put a little bit of instant gasket on here too. There's no actual gasket on this machine, so I'll just add this just in case anything wants to leak out. That should keep her good. To get the handle back on and these leads. Well, the lead must have been shortened before. They're not normally that tight to get on. That's her. One old Ryobi ED450, hopefully up and running again, with just 2 new bearings, or at least sounding a lot better. Sounds a lot better, alright. Make sure she hammers now. Nice one. They are a very old machine, but a very good one. You don't get to say that now about modern Ryobi machines. There's no way you can call them industrial. But these things were. It's old, it's abused, it's been worked, it's earned its money, but it's still up and running with just 2 bearings. That shows you how well they were made, and that they were made to last. That's her. Next up, I'm assuming we have a little accident. Makita Jigsaw. Customer says the base has come off. It won't go back on. Yeah. It's just a wee socket head that holds on the base. That's damaged. I would imagine the thread. Yeah. Thread in here is damaged too. That's just held on there. Clearly it's not holding anymore, so either it's got a drop or somebody strapped it out by over tightening it. So I'll see if we can get this back on, or see what's holding it on actually. Sometimes it's just a wee square nut, sometimes it's an actual metal bracket. So this is the DGV184, and she's not old, 2022. I think it's like an in-between model. It's not the heavy one, and it's not a light one. It's an in-between brushless one. Small and light, but I wouldn't call it compact. Probably just a better battery placement for it. Let's see what's going on with this one. Yeah. It's a bracket. So we'll have to see if we have one of them. Overall, actually, not a bad wee jigsaw. We'll look at it from the parts breakdown, see what all parts we can get for it as well. And I'll see if I have one of these. Here we go. One bracket or holder. 347251-7. Now this is a simple repair. It simply drops in there. And that's it. It's a very simple one. Now, as for the inside of it, what she like. She's made up like a heavy duty jigsaw. And that's the sort of stuff you would get inside a heavy duty one. Different tool holder, just that's the only thing. But the heavy duty ones will have a separate gearbox enclosure, so it'll have a front and back cover, normally an aluminium casing or something. That's the corded machines. These cordless ones, they're all made up like this here, same as the light duty corded one. Same sort of setup, it's just all encased in the plastic housing. Nearly every brand's the same now. This Makita one, you can get most of the stuff separately, things like the actual wee foot and everything like you'd obviously get, but then as well you get the switch separate, the LED light or lock button separately. You even get the LED light itself. You can buy that on its own. Just wee connectors here. Speed control, field, battery contacts, they're all sold individually away from the controller. The controller itself is sold with PCB board on the back of the stator. But even still, that on its own to buy, they've actually come down in price. That unit there, the controller on its own, costs about 70 or 80 euro. isn't bad. It's expensive, but it's not bad. It's still around half the price of the machine. Some machines, especially brushless, the controller can cost as much as the machine itself. So not bad that that's at least half the price. It's more manageable anyway. Right, I think that's us. Just make sure over here your wee seal and your guide block is in place. And this little leaf spring as well. Sometimes they can pop out. Make sure that's sitting down in there. Another wee feature is quite good in this is the actual tool holder itself. Most brands, or nearly all brands now, the actual tool holder just comes as the lifting rod. So the actual tool holder itself here and the whole lifting rod up there, that comes as one solid piece. Can be quite expensive to replace. It's a bigger part. That's Makita. See the thread down here. There's two socket heads and the back of this here wee clamp here. This whole tool holder head just comes clean off. So you don't have to replace the entire lifter. You can buy that there tool holder head assembly in one piece for like €20. That's a great idea. So if you break that, if you damage it, if you just mess it up, if it just wears out, you can replace that without the whole lifting rod. And even if you wanted to, if you just break the sleeve or the spring or a pin or something inside of it, you can buy each and every component inside of that as well. So just about everything in this jigsaw is actually available separately. You don't have to buy part assemblies, whole groups of parts together. You can buy each and every individual component for it. So if one thing breaks, you can just replace that one thing. That's what I like to see. That's why I like Makita tools. That wee tool holder, that's a great idea. That's handy. Like I say, in some brands that whole lifter rod assembly, if this falls apart, you have to replace all that. It can cost up to about €70. So to buy the actual head for 20, that's a brilliant idea. All you have to do to replace it, lift that whole assembly clean out. It's just sitting onto this roller and two guide bushes there. Lift it out, unbolt it, bolt on your new one, drop it all back in again. Nice system, nice setup. That thing there has been designed to keep on running, even if it breaks down. One thing about it is though, tiny little motor. Look at the size of the little brushless motor on it. Suppose for a jigsaw, it's enough, it's all you really need. But that's very small. But everything else is available, and even if you do burn out your stator, you can just replace it, same as your rotor as well. But that, you only need this wee bracket, and that should be it. And also just replace that with a nice fresh one. It's a more basic model because it doesn't have a quick release for that. You have to actually use an Allen key. Plus you've only got one support, so that's probably why she's sheared off. There's no extra pins to line it up. But that should be her. Oh, power on. That's her. One base reattached to Makita DJV184 cordless jigsaw. Now, Makita core drill. This is GBH5-40D drill from 2007. Customer says he's using it on a generator. When he pulls the trigger, it's hanging the generator. So maybe some sort of an electrical fault. Not good. I think that's an armature. 110 volt, yeah. Doesn't look bad. Doesn't look burnt. She's obviously fighting with herself. The switch isn't good. The cover's gone. That's not right. So it's your live and neutral. Go onto your capacitor or your noise suppression capacitor. There's 2 lines get on then for your motor. Make sure it's nothing simple. So live's okay and neutral's okay. And they're not crossed over. And they're not crossed to earth. Right, there's a problem there. I'm getting live across the neutral. Why am I getting that? Yeah, sorry, sure. Still got the brushes on. So if the brushes are on, you're going to get live across. So obviously you're testing the live here, but it's running across the field and across the brushes onto the other side of the field and back to the switch. So you're going to get it crossed over. The other thing is the armature's not hot. You just have to get in and see what's going on. Got an oil leak going on here too. The motor's actually packed out. Looks like dirt and just oil. Take the sleeve off. I want the chuck off first. Definitely got an oil leak anyway. He's less concerned about that. That could be one of the problems. Test that first. Feel doesn't look too bad. This is the bit we want to know. Get out old Betsy. Yeah. Short it out. Completely gone, actually. No wonder she won't run. And no wonder she's hanging the Jenny. That needs a new armature. Right, that's a no-go. That could be up to €180 to fix. 180 to 200 actually. And that's not including the gearbox. So it obviously has an oil leak. By the looks of it, that oil leak is one of the reasons why she burnt out. All the vents are completely blocked. So she wasn't getting any air. She couldn't cool down. So that was just ran until she overheated, shorted everything out. So with that money, I'd rather just buy a new one. So forget about this. I may as well take it back. If he's getting the same one again, at least he has a few spares. Now the machine you actually see in for repair very often. It's only a small core drill. It can be used for other things as well. But normally boys get them for dry diamond cores. But for the size of the machine, they're actually a nice one to use. They'll actually do up to a 6-inch core dry. And as you can see from this one, they can do quite a bit of work. Just put it all back together again. So everything's where it should be. They are a half decent machine for all the size of them. But obviously, if they're not getting cooled down, they're not going to last. So that's one that's just not going to be fixed. Just make more sense to replace. That's it. Not fixed. Right, we're sticking with the Makitas here. Small AOE grinder. This is the Makita 9554NB. And she's from 2012. 12 years of work done. What's she like? Not good. Right, that's an armature. So the armature for this doesn't come with the rear bearing. The top bearing's part of the head, so if you replace the armature, you have to replace the bearing as well, which also means new armature. You have to replace the brushes too. Clearly this has been used quite a bit and not looked after by the looks of it. Right. So if you're replacing the armature, bearing and brushes to begin with, you're into about €40 so far, including labour and VAT. It'll be worth it, maybe at that. It's quite hot too. Anything else and it's not worth it. And I mean anything, even just the lead. So once it goes into more bits, you're up over half the price of a new machine. Nothing looks melted. And brushes aren't old anyway. Either he's recently changed them, or he doesn't use this an awful lot. Now that thing is the field. Make sure it hasn't melted, which does and can happen. Don't get caught out by just doing an obvious fix when you know it's an armature. You know it's the armature, so you order the brushes bearing an armature and leave it alone then until you fit it. Then once the parts comes on, you open up the machine to fit it and you realise there's actually more wrong than you thought. So always just check out the whole thing. Yeah, see there? She's gone. That's another sure way of telling if you're not sure if an armature has gone, especially if you haven't been able to switch it on or something. See the resin binder that holds down the windings. If bits of it is cracked off like that and come away, it's a surefire sign of it's had extreme heat. Heat means a bad armature. And that field looks okay. So we might fix this one some other day because I don't have the armature. So we'll box it up and we'll order on the armature. We already have the brushes and we have the bearings. It's the rear bearing here. It doesn't actually come with the armature. That one there is actually okay. Just about free, so we'll just replace that anyway. Order an armature when it comes on, we'll stick that back together. All we can do is box it up and wait for it to come on. And Makita, see a lot of brands aren't stocking as much. Sometimes they can be on the next day if my supplier has it in stock, or you could be waiting a few weeks for Makita to send it out to them. If my supplier has it, it's at the door next morning, but we'll have to see when this comes on. Leave that for now. Now, next up we're on to a Bosch Multitool. This is a GOP250CE 2014 actually. He's working. One thing about the Bosch, I would say, multi-tools, wild loud machines. These Bosch ones, they're not that loud at all. Right, she's running, and I think that's the problem there. This steel ring here, with the wee teeth on it, for actually grabbing your blades, half of them are gone. So normally that happens from using universal blades, because they're not locking on to all their teeth. Certain ones can get weaker over time and start snapping off. Once one goes, the rest start going then slowly. And once you lose so many, you can only put your blade on a certain angle, especially if you're using the universal blade. So you have to replace that. Hope that's all wrong with it anyway, because there's no note to say what it's in for. Now, this is one of the advantages of buying the Bosch multi-tools. This steel ring here, you can buy it on its own. Just a little ring, nothing more. If this were a Makita, you would have to replace the entire head. Not even just a spindle, the entire gear head. They don't supply this separately. Most brands don't. The Bosch one though, you can buy it on its own. That wee part there, €10. Nice and cheap and relatively easy to replace. How do we actually get it off? Fairly simple. She's just pressed on. A few washers and a blowtorch. The washer's only there to actually stop the heat getting to the rubber head on top. Get rid of the washers. Get a different bolt into the middle, because the one that comes with it has a washer on it that'll get in the way. And pull it off. Should use the extension. Don't have the room to get it the full way off. Should have used this way extension. There we go. If you take your plastic cover off, you have a nice flat spot here to set the head on top of, so you can press on this new ring. And that's it. .13mm socket to press the ring on, and a flat steel bar to support underneath. Simple as that. That back on as well, just to stop debris getting into the gearbox. That's her. One Bosch GOP250CE Multitool with a new blade tool holder fitted. An easy and a cheap repair at only €10 for that little part. That's her. And we'll keep her going. Next up, an old favourite, Makita 4.5-inch brushed cordless grinder. This is the DGA5-40D. Not sure what year it is. It's very free. Well, let's switch on. Yes, but it's very slow. So more than likely that will be the brushes. So there's an old number there. This was fixed before. Go with the price. It got a set of brushes and a brush holder. Generally, when they burn through it once, it's generally from heat. If they start doing it again, it means the armature is getting hotter faster, which means it's on its way out. That's not gone, but you can see it's discolored. It's got very hot. Then brushes, they're actually still moving. Yeah, but they are melted. That's melted. They're burnt. Right. So that's going to be the same thing again. Set of brushes, U-cap, U-brush holder. Because this side looks alright, but you can see that one up in there is melted. It's definitely melted if it's melted the cap. If I replace them, if they're using that for any length of time at all, it's just going to do the exact same thing again. You're alright changing the brush holder and brushes at least once. After that there, the armature is going to have higher resistance, and the more you use it, the faster it's going to heat up. The more it heats, the more likely it is to do this again. So once you'll get away with, twice maybe, but if it's darkened like that there, it's already burnt up, and as soon as you use it again, it's going to get hot fairly quick. So you're going to get no actual use out of this from repairing it again unless you replace the armature too. Replacing the armature, I just don't think it's worth it. So that one I'm actually going to leave, because it's obviously done quite a bit of work already. It'll probably be more beneficial for them to buy a new one and put it under a longer warranty than to actually fix that for a second time. Now, next up we have a Bosch hammer. This is the GBH5-40D, the newer version 540. What's wrong with this one? Two things. One, a little bit of sparking. Two, the smell. Unmistakable smell of a bad motor. Yeah, you can tell by the sparking she's not good, and you can tell by the smell she's gone. But if you're not sure and you're unfamiliar with that smell, you can tell by the colour of that armature. See just there? And com bars should be a nice bright copper colour. See, they're all darkened. And you can see the leads burnt here as well. So it's been getting very, very hot. Has to get very hot to change the colour of the actual com bar. So that's gone. And you can hear as well there's something not right with it. Hear that we scrape at the end. In other words, there's a segment that is different from the rest. There it is there. That one ain't good. The bad segment, it's been overheated, it's sparking, it's gone. Question is, does the thing still hammer? Because changing the motor on this will not be cheap. And if it needs a full service as well or anything else, it could become too expensive. So before we look at changing this, make sure up here is working. Alright, that sounds and feels quite good actually. It's definitely hammering quite well. So it's just the motor. Price this first before we go any further. Okay, fair enough. This isn't actually too bad a price. So if you're changing the motor on its own and don't have to touch up here, this looks to be around €200. That's 200 including the motor itself, a set of brushes, a bearing down here, and maybe the bearing up here as well, depending if the armature comes with it or not. So if that's all you need to change, €200 includes the part, labour and VAT, which is a lot cheaper than actually replacing the machine. So this isn't too bad a repair, considering this here costs what, €700. 200 in a bad price compared to 700. Now, do I have these in stock though? One armature, one set of brushes. We cut a new motor into a Milwaukee hammer the other day. Might as well do a Bosch now. That's the rotor. And that's the colour your comm bar should be. It shouldn't be that black in colour. Now they go black here from the brushes running on them. But up here shouldn't be discoloured. Up here changes colour. It's going to be heat. And heat kills all motors. Now this comes with a wee taco separate. That's a wee separate part. That goes on the bottom of here. That's a little magnet for the speed control down here to actually click up so it knows how fast it's running. You need that as well. And also, if you have one of these hammers, GBH5-40s, if you're ever using them, it switches on, goes up the speed nice and quick, and then just shuts off again. That's your problem. If that breaks, it can't read the speed, so it gets no feedback to the controller. So you switch it on, it increases the power and increases the speed till it goes full speed, and if it's still not recognising the armature rotating, it'll just shut down. So just a wee common fault that can sometimes happen, and all it is just that wee taco there. If that breaks or cracks, it starts giving the wrong reading or gives no reading. This here actual magnet part here breaks off, so you get no reading at all. So if she starts up and then quickly dies on you, change that, that'll cure your problem. But this one needs more than that today. Just get everything out of the way here first, including the old brushes. I'll get this handle off. Like the Milwaukee, it's fairly simple to actually do this. You don't need to strip apart an awful lot. Actually get the handle off, there's 2 more bolts down on here. Don't forget this little wire here for your tachometer, for your speed control. And to pull that out, there's a little catch back here. Push that back. That can slide out. Get that out of the way. Move that. It'll make it a lot easier to work on this. So now we only have to deal with this section. Sometimes they come out easy, sometimes they don't. It hasn't done an awful lot of work. The gears aren't worn, so we're good. We don't have to do anything in here to the crank. We don't have to replace that. What year is this machine? It's actually only a 2020, so she's not that old. So this side here is fine. We'll leave that alone. We just want to deal with the motor. Get that off. There's your wee taco then on the bottom, and she's screwed on. So some models, the older ones, will have a nut holding the armature on. This one just used the actual taco itself instead of a nut. So a set of water pump pliers on the gear, a 10mm spanner up here. So we don't need the old one because we have a replacement. And there's the old armature. Clearly she is gone. You can see that little raised section there as well. That's the clicking whenever she was slowing down. So if you see them and you see it this colour and that colour up there, you know they're not good. Mightn't always mean they're gone completely, but they're going to be heating up. Copper work hardens. So same thing as you bend a paper clip, you can bend it no problem, but if you repeatedly bend it, it eventually fatigues, it snaps because it gets hard and brittle. You're actually work hardening it. Same thing with copper, it can happen with heat. So when you have a nice fresh armature like this, the copper and the copper windings and all on it will have very low resistance, so it's not going to resist the electricity going through it. Once you start heating it, once it heats up through running, if it gets too hot, heating and cooling over time, if it keeps getting too hot, it'll work harden. In other words, the resistance will start going up, so it'll start resisting electricity going through it. So like so this one, if this hadn't blown, this will have a lot higher resistance than this one. So whenever you're running these two together, if you ran these for an hour, this one will be fine. This one will be scalding hot because it's acting like a radiator basically. It becomes a heating element because of such high resistance. So when you start seeing them like this, you know there's not much time left on them because the resistance inside is just too high. So when you see it like that, you know there's not much life left in it. Don't be going spending a lot of money on the machine fixing it, because it could need a new armature fairly soon, if not straight away. So that one's gone. At least the new one does come with a new bearing too. Now the armature is burnt out. Question is, what's the feel like? It actually doesn't look too bad. It's not burnt the same way. It's not the same colour, so that should be alright. Generally, a field doesn't get the same kind of abuse as an armature anyway. Whenever there's resistance and rotation, this is what's going to take the extra current. This is just an electromagnet repelling this, so this doesn't get the same sort of heat. Generally, the heat this gets is just going to be the radiated heat from this. So that should be okay, but we can quickly test it by just testing the resistance. So on a new field, this is a smaller one but roughly the same size. So you're looking at 0.7 ohms. That's what a brand new field will be reading. As little resistance as possible. And this one, even with not unwiring it and taking it out, .5, so that's fine. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. You want it to be below 1. If it is below, you're good to go. We also need to replace this bearing, which is actually gone as well. It looks like a 628. So only 3 parts so far that we have to change in this machine. Obviously, don't screw it on that way, because you need this end for gripping on the spanner, for taking it on and off. Make sure you leave the 2 flat edges to the bottom. Just get a good tight fit. I'm just going to grip this in a vise and use the spanner on it. That's her. I'm going to keep this bearing pushed up, keep the armature up. You need to fit this plate, but you need this anyway because that's what has the actual sensor for the tacho inside. But you actually need it anyway because that's where the actual sensor for the tacho goes, as with this plastic mount does. So you can fit this either way. If that's the wrong way, you need the opening with the sensor sliding in to be facing the back handle where the wire's coming from. And that's her. One motor unit ready to go. Now this oil seal should be alright because it's only a 2020 machine. That shouldn't be worn out yet. But same as the Milwaukee, we'll just top up the grease a little bit, just to guarantee it's got good compression. It's okay. We'll go with that. Drop that on. Bolt it down. You can fit the brushes now. Back in the handle, reattach this. Slide that on. Your wires are already set to the right place. Just click them onto the wee holders. This one wraps around there. And onto that spade. Finally, your bottom cover. Does she run? Nice one. I'll just see as well. That base is not very clean. Some of the holes are actually gummed up, so that's not going to get enough air running up through, because it'll be sucking air in from here and blowing it out the front. So if it's not getting any air, that'll overheat the motor as well. So we'll clean that up. See if we can clean them holes out. Don't need anything high tech. Just a wire brush to poke the holes clean. That'll just help it breathe. For such a small part, there's quite a bit of dirt in that. It's not going to get much air clogged up like that. Now, that's a lot better. She can breathe more easily now. That'll help keep her cool. Last thing, make sure she hammers good. That's her. Another one fixed. One Bosch GBH5-40D with a new motor, armature, brushes and bearing replaced. And for anybody that has one, want to know if it'd be worth fixing up, definitely would be at €200. That's for a repair shop. If you're doing that at home, which you easily could, be a lot less. As you can see, there's not many tools required. Tools you actually need: main one, set of torque screwdrivers, a way to grip the armature, either a set of water pump pliers or a vise or something like that, and a 10mm spanner. That's all the tools you actually need. No bearing press or specialist tools needed, just those three. And there's only torques you actually need as well, no flats or Phillips. Couldn't be easier. Try it at home. If you have one of these and you've burnt out the motor, it's well worth replacing it, and it ain't hard to do. Thanks for watching, folks. Give us a wee comment down below if you've any questions, and give us a wee like and a follow if you're enjoying these kind of videos. Cheers. Chat to you later.